In part 7 of our recap of the God of War series, which was the first part recounting the tale of the latest PS4 release, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the parts of Norse mythology that act as a backstory to the game, and spoke about some of the most important characters that Kratos and Atreus meet with on their journey, while also briefly discussing the events of the first few hours of the game itself. In part 8, we're going to be focusing much more on the actual narrative that unfolds throughout the course of the game. Within the first few hours of gameplay after Kratos and Atreus leave their home for their journey to the highest peak in all the realms, they've almost met all the most important players of the story, all of whom we've already spoken about in the previous part. Brock, Sindri, the World Serpent, and the woman who for now is known only as the Witch of the Woods. And this woman in particular proves to be quite an asset for the Spartan and his son as they continue onward with their journey. They begin their slow ascent up the mountain, but in the very beginning stages of their trek they notice that things have changed. The land of Midgard has for a long time been one of desolation, as it is for many long years now due to a series of events, most notably the war between the Aesir and the Vanir, that wreaked havoc upon all the realms. Living souls have been a rare sight as it is, but now things are looking even more grim. Draugr, who are undead soldiers who for some reason have denied or been denied a place in Valhalla, are roaming the lands in huge numbers, making the already hostile environments even more dangerous to tread, while other beasts such as trolls, reavers and ferocious wolves, to name just a few, have also become far more aggressive and a much more frequent sight. It's immediately clear to Kratos and Atreus as soon as they leave the safety of the forest they've always called home that things are amiss. To Kratos though, that makes no difference. He's faced far worse in his past, and to Atreus, the newness and excitement of the journey he's taking with his father helps him keep distracted from the loss of his mother. As they're making their way up the mountain though, they face their first major obstacle. In their path they see a thick black smoke, a corrupted and evil magic that's blocking the way ahead, and in turn, the passage to the top of the mountain. Kratos and Atreus find themselves unable to get through the black smoke, but almost immediately they find out what they have to do in order to continue their journey. The Witch of the Woods appears before them and she offers them her help, telling the father-son duo that she knows what they must do to dispel the black smoke. She tells them that to dispel the smoke, they need to make use of something known as the Light of Alfheim, a magical, pure light that can be found in, well, Alfheim, the realm of the light and dark elves. To travel to Alfheim, though, they need a Bifrost. Incidentally, the witch happens to have a Bifrost in her possession, which she gives to Kratos, telling him that not only must the device be used to travel between realms, but it is with this device that he will also be able to capture the light of Alfheim and make use of it. Seeing no other option but to capture the light of Alfheim in the Bifrost, Kratos and Atreus travel between realms, leaving Midgard and going to the realm of the elves. At first, the witch tries to come with them, telling them that she will offer as much aid as she can, but also implying that for now, beyond her providing them with a Bifrost, that may not amount to much more. And that turns out to be true, because as soon as the three of them reach Alfheim, the witch is magically pulled back from Alfheim as she disappears into what looks like a portal. Atreus, of course, is worried about what may have happened to her, but Kratos is, characteristically enough, not so worried. He knows what to do next, and that is all he's focused on. Capturing the light, though, proves to be easier said than done, because as soon as they arrive in Alfheim, they see that things are amiss even in this realm. The large, shining pillar of light that once used to shine as brightly as a star in the center of the realm is fading, to the point where it's barely visible anymore, while corpses of elves, both light and dark, lay strewn about haphazardly everywhere the eye can see. Clearly, this realm too is facing dire circumstances, but what exactly those are remains unclear. What is clear is that the light and dark elves are at war with each other, but why that is and how that may be connected to what's going on across all the other realms is a mystery. Once again, Atreus acts as the player's voice, posing questions and wonderments about the status of Alfheim and its residents. But Kratos shuts him down. He tells his son that they have a job to do here, and that is all they're going to do. The Spartan clearly has no intentions of getting involved in the ongoing war in this realm. As they make their way through Alfheim though, Kratos and Atreus are able to witness firsthand the effect the ongoing war between the Light and Dark Elves has had on the realm. There's fighting everywhere, things have started to decay, and on several occasions the father and son are attacked by hosts of Dark Elves as well as other manner of creature. Almost constantly, Atreus is hearing voices that Kratos himself cannot hear, voices that seem to be speaking of things beyond either of their understanding. The Light Elves seem to be a peaceful, non-aggressive race who have been locked out of their home by the ruthless and merciless Dark Elves, but perhaps all is not as it seems. We'll get back to this in just a bit. Eventually, Kratos and Atreus make it to the source of the light of Alfheim, after fighting through waves upon waves of Dark Elves and other beasts. As they stand near the light though, Atreus tells Kratos that he can hear the voices from within the light. More importantly, he can also hear the voice of his mother, Faye. Understandably, the boy is eager to step into the light and search for the source of these voices, but Kratos doesn't let him do so. Not knowing what's within the light, he tells Atreus to stay outside while he himself goes in. He hands Atreus his axe, telling him to only use it in defense as a last resort, and then steps in. As Kratos walks into the light, he has a series of visions, showing him locations that he's seen or been to before, and others that he hasn't. More importantly though, he hears the voice of Atreus in the background, the beleaguered and despondent rumblings of a child who's still mourning the loss of his mother. Atreus seems to be speaking to Faye, telling her that he needs her to come back, to not leave her alone with him, his father, a man who is never around. A man who, in Atreus' own words, never wanted him and never will. The boy's words echo in Kratos' head, saying how he wishes that it had been Kratos, not Faye, who had died. The words are hard-hitting, demonstrating that Atreus has been left alone in the world with a father he has no relationship with, a man he doesn't know, and a man who doesn't know him. And yet, even so, Kratos hears the boy telling his mother that if his father makes an effort to be better, then so shall he. The entire time these words echo in the background, Kratos follows a bright light he believes to be Faye through his series of visions, and right at the end, just as he's about to approach her, he's pulled out. Shaken and dazed, Kratos lands on his back and finds himself lying on the ground in Alfheim next to the Pillar of Light, where it turns out it was Atreus that had pulled him out. Kratos begins to lose his temper, demanding to know why his son pulled him out, but Atreus is, to put it mildly, quite angry. And as Kratos looks around, it dawns upon him that he's been away and inside the light much longer than he thought. While the Spartan was under the impression that he'd only been in the light for a few minutes, it's actually been at least a number of hours. As he looks around, he sees heaps and piles of dead beasts and dark elves lying all around, and Kratos realizes that these had all been attacking Atreus and were killed by him while he waited for his father to step out of the light for who knows how long, growing ever more anxious about the possibility that, once again, his father had left him alone. Time, it is quite clear, moves quite differently, not just across realms, but in some scenarios within realms as well. That said, at least Kratos now has what he and Atreus came to Alfheim for, the light, which he used the Bifrost to capture. With that in their possession, the pair decide to travel back to Midgard, dispel the black fog in their path, and then continue their journey to the top of the mountain. Before they can get back to Midgard though, they end up doing the very thing Kratos had been adamant on avoiding since the moment they stepped into Alfheim. They become involved in the war between the two races of elves. To begin with, as they're leaving the temple surrounding the light, they open its doors, allowing the light elves to make it back in again. Following this, just as they're about to leave Alfheim and travel back to Midgard, they're attacked by the king of the Dark Elves. Now, let's be fair here. The Dark Elves had been attacking Kratos and Atreus almost the entire time they'd been in Alfheim, but in strengthening the light of Alfheim and allowing the Light Elves to re-enter the temple, Kratos clearly did something that did not bode well with the Dark Elves. Kratos and the King of the Dark Elves engage in a fierce, tense duel, and after a long and exciting boss encounter, Kratos manages to defeat his foe, to no one's surprise actually. But just as the king of the Dark Elves is dying, he utters something in his tongue, a few last words that seem to shake Atreus a little bit. Atreus, who has an uncanny and vast knowledge of a number of languages that Kratos cannot even begin to grasp, tells Kratos what the Dark Elves said, that the father and son have apparently chosen the wrong side, that they've made a grave mistake. Does this mean that all is not what it seems? Perhaps there's more to the war between the Light Elves and the Dark Elves than the stuff that seems obvious on the surface. The two of them are unable to get any further details though, and these questions are left tantalizingly unanswered, probably so that they can come into play in greater capacity in one of the game's planned sequels. For now though, even as both the player and Atreus' minds enter hyperdrive about the possibilities of what this could mean, Kratos remains typically unconcerned. With the light of Alfheim and the Bifrost in hand, the Spartan and the boy return to Midgard and are successfully able to dispel the black fog, opening up the path ahead. The path takes them through a network of mines within the mountain, and that serves as a rather bulky and rather excellent gameplay section, full of traps to navigate, tense combat encounters, and some smart level design. Kratos and Atreus eventually find their way out of the mines, about to emerge near the peak of the mountain. But as an elevator slowly takes them up towards the top, something incredible happens. Well, incredible for us, not so much for Kratos and Atreus themselves. The pair is attacked by a massive, formidable-looking dragon that breathes electricity instead of fire. Kratos manages to fend off the dragon, and him and Atreus make it out of the mines and back onto the mountain not long after. But as soon as they do, they see that the dragon is still very much a threat. In the distance, they see Sindri, one of the dwarven blacksmiths they met earlier, cowering behind cover as the dragon tries to attack it. Kratos, being Kratos, obviously doesn't care. He wants to leave it be, to let it tear Sindri apart if that's what it wishes to do, because it doesn't concern him. His only goal is to reach the top of the mountain and spread Faye's ashes, and if he can go around the dragon without having to fight it, he will happily do so. Atreus, though, doesn't have the cynicism that characterizes his father. He begs Kratos to let them help Sindri, and the Spartan reluctantly agrees. What follows is an incredible, breathtaking encounter between the beast and the Spartan, and it ends, predictably enough, with a quintessential Kratos finishing move that brutalizes and kills the dragon in the most typical God of War fashion. Sindri thanks the Spartan and his son, and though Atreus is happy to receive his gratitude, Kratos bluntly tells the dwarf that he did not care about saving him, and that he only killed the dragon because it was in his way. Sindri, however, still finds a way to express his gratitude to Kratos and Atreus. He gives Atreus a bunch of mistletoe arrows, an upgrade over the arrows he normally uses. Following this, Kratos and Atreus continue their trek toward the top of the mountain. Before we continue though, we're going to have to speak about something. It may seem like a tiny detail right now, but it comes into play in a very major way later on in the story. As they're continuing their trek, Kratos notices that one of the straps of Atreus' quiver is broken, and to fix this, he uses one of Atreus' mistletoe arrows as a binding. Again, it may seem like a completely inconsequential detail right now, but keep this in mind either way. So eventually, finally, Kratos and the boy make it to the top of the mountain. But as they're clinging to the mountainside while climbing their way up, they hear the sounds of a conversation from the mountaintop right up above them. It turns out that Balder, the son of Odin who can feel no pain, is still alive, even after his fight with Kratos at the beginning of the game. Really, this should come as no surprise, since he can feel no pain. He is quite literally unkillable, and he is now hot on their trail. He's looking for the man with the red tattoos who was traveling with the child. Why exactly? For that matter, why did he even come to Kratos' house in the first place? Well, it's still not time to answer those questions yet, but they will be answered. As Kratos and Atreus eavesdrop on the conversation, they're able to gather a little more information. Balder is on the mountaintop with his nephews, Magni and Modi, who are the sons of Thor himself. All three of them are currently hot on the trail of Kratos, and to find him, they have come to the mountaintop for information on their quarry. And why have they come here? Because on top of the mountain is someone else you might remember us mentioning in the previous part, Mimir, the smartest man alive. the guy who brokered the marriage between Freyr and Odin to bring an end to the Aesir-Vanir war. Mimir, you see, has been trapped on top of the mountain for countless years by Odin, trapped within the body of a tree with roots and branches growing all around him and holding him in place. And the smartest man alive is no mere boast. He truly is very smart, and possesses a vast knowledge of possibly every matter one can think of. As such, he is often aware of things that others simply cannot even think of, which is why Odin often comes to him for information. Odin holds no love for Mimir, as is evidenced by his imprisonment and torturing of him, but he sees value in what he is and what he can do, and hence often heeds his counsel and his information. Mimir, though, tells Balder and Thor's sons that he has no idea where Kratos is, that he hasn't seen him or Atreus, and that the pair hasn't yet arrived at the mountain. They try to get the information out of Mimir anyway. While Magni and Modi threaten to take his one good eye out, Balder tells him that if he tells them what they want to know, that he will talk to his father Odin and see if Mimir can be set free. But Mimir holds no love for the Aesir, quite the opposite in fact, and is far too smart to believe that there is even a slight chance that Odin lets him go. He also knows that his vast reserves of knowledge are far too valuable for Odin to let anyone kill him, and so Mimir tells Balder and the sons of Thor in as many words to piss off. And off they piss indeed, leaving Kratos and Atreus with the time and room to have a conversation with Mimir themselves. Kratos tells Atreus to check the path Balder took to confirm if they are truly gone, and while he's gone it becomes apparent that Mimir knows of Kratos' true nature. He also perceives, in fact, that Atreus is unaware of the same, and Kratos tells Mimir very firmly that he would rather keep it that way. Atreus returns, reaffirming that Balder, Magni and Modi have indeed left the area, following which Kratos promptly gets down to business. Firstly, he asks Mimir why Balder is after them, but Mimir, surprisingly enough, doesn't know that. He tells the Spartan, however, that if he's given time, he will be able to figure it out. It's at this point that Atreus tells Mimir why he and his father are here, on top of the mountain. He tells him about his mother, and that they're here to fulfill her final wish, that her ashes to be spread from the highest peak in all the realms. Mimir, though, has bad news for the two travellers. He tells them that the highest peak in all the realms isn't in Midgard at all, it's actually in Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, meaning that if Fate told Kratos and Atreus to spread her ashes from the highest peak in all the realms, she wanted them to go to Jotunheim. That's easier said than done though. As you might remember, as a result of Odin and Thor's brutal onslaught on the giants in all the realms, the Jotun retreated to their own realms centuries ago, and while doing so, destroyed all bridges and entries to their realm to make sure that none of their enemies would follow them there. They did, however, leave one bridge behind, one on top of the mountain itself, where Mimir has been trapped for over a century. The bridge, however, is locked with a secret rune, Mimir tells them, though there is one way to open it up. Kratos, of course, silently considers his options. Going to Jotunheim will prove difficult, more difficult than he might know, but he also knows that that is what he and Atreus must do to fulfill Fate's last wishes, and not doing that simply isn't an option for either of them. On top of that, Mimir also tells him that going to the realm of the Jotun would only be their best and the only sensible move for the two of them. Balder is after them both, and if they are to remain safe and out of his reach, going to Jotunheim, where he will not be able to follow them, would surely be a good plan. Kratos decides then that they must indeed go to Jotunheim, much to Atreus' delight. To do so, they must find the key to the Jotun runes that lock the gate to the realm, something Mimir tells them only a giant would know of. When Atreus points out that all the giants in Midgard are dead, Mimir tells them that while that is indeed true, they might be able to find a way to unlock the gate anyway. The first step they need to take to that end, according to Mimir, is to cut off his head. He tells Kratos and Atreus that when Odin bound him to the tree on the mountain, he used an immensely powerful spell that would prevent all weapons, even one as strong as Thor's own hammer, from separating his body from the tree. His head, however, can be removed. Once removed, his head can then be reanimated and brought back to life using the ways of old magic, at which point Mimir would be able to freely help them with their quest to Jotunheim. Conveniently enough, it just so happens that Kratos and Atreus know a certain witch who might be able to help them with that. And that's where we're going to finish part 8. In the 9th and final part of this section of our God of War The Story So Far series, we'll be wrapping up the plot of God of War 2018, speaking about Kratos and Atreus' attempts at making it to Jotunheim and everything else that entails.
And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.